more time and see if sound is a thing that comes out. Yo, what up, what up, what up? If you're looking at this live on the stream, it is indeed 4 o'clock in the morning here because I'm stupid and took a nap when I shouldn't have. I took a nap during the middle of a NBA playoff game that was like a massive accident. So I'm kind of fucked because I have to be at my girlfriend's grandmother's house at noon, but I also need to do some work when I wake up. So I have to wake up at like 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Anyway, we'll find out. Let me see if this audio is. Alright, cool. The audio is working on that one. Let's see if the audio is working on the current live stream that we were doing while we're on YouTube. The last stream I did, that was not happening. Alright, it is. We're good to go. We just need to. Oh, Jesus. Here we go. Let's open up Spreaker. I'm gonna tell you this right now. If Spreaker fucks up or fucks up the mics or something like that, we are just not gonna record a podcast today. I'm already really. I'm gonna be. I'll tell you guys what happened, but I was gonna record earlier today, but I had to go to the car dealership because yesterday while I was driving my car, my driver door opened up. I'm sorry, my rear passenger door opened while I was driving, and it was because the latch that attaches the door handle to the chassis of the car broke, or the plastic plate that holds it in broke. And I took it to the dealership, and the technician looked at me like, what the fuck? And I too was like, what the fuck? Because it was baffling that could happen and did happen to me while I was driving. And I feel like there's like a lawsuit in there somewhere, but I just wanted my car fixed. There's a lot of things going wrong with my car. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a fuse that's messed up that's stopping a simple replacement of a headlight bulb that I need to do something about. And then, of course, I guess you guys, if you don't know me personally, my windshield's been cracked for like a couple of months, and I said I was going to do it. Oh my God. Spreaker has to restart because there's an update to the app. Yeah, that's not going to fuck anything up. Bro, we might not be. If this shuts down this stream, I'm gonna lose my shit. Anyway, yeah. So what was I saying? I have that situation going on. What happened? What is this? Did we just skip a frame? We dropped one frame a few seconds ago, and I'm pretty sure it's Spreaker related. I don't give a shit what Spreaker does. Anyway, so. See if it's still copied. It is. So yeah. Sorry guys, I'm trying to fix this stupid there we go. Trying to fix something on Spreaker real quick. Anyway, the thing that I wanted to point out was I have that going on. As a matter of fact, there we go. I have that situation going on, so it was fun. That's fun for me, personally. But yeah, we're going to get that fixed pretty soon, even though it's going to cost us like over $300. I just found out the other day, not what I was quoted on the phone, which should not be surprising. Like at some point in your kids, part of growing up is learning that when people quote you something, it is all but a lie. It is a way to get you into the building and then tell you like, oh, this thing costs this much amount of money, but also like I didn't tell you what the fees on this top were and what the labor is going to be, because like this is a place that specializes in windshields, and they were trying to tell me they don't know how much labor was going to cost, and I was like, bro. Like, yes, you do. Why won't you tell me? And it's because it like it more than doubles the price. So, but yeah, no, like I gotta figure that out. If you're wondering what I'm doing with my mustache, like one of these hairs in my mustache grows awkwardly long, and it scrapes against my nose, and it makes it feel like somebody's tickling my nose while I talk. So I have to constantly keep it combed or whatever. Anyway, we should probably do this show so I can go to sleep before 5 o'clock in the morning. Because the worst thing for me mentally, the thing that messes with me mentally the most, and is a freebie, is watching the sunrise. So it's like a mental thing. We skipped one frame, but we're good now. So we got everything lined up for what else? We're talking NFL, NBA playoffs. Sorry, NBA playoffs right here. And then we need to do NBA. Well, we're not really. Yes, we are. What else? Oh, just type Nike in and see what happens, because we do have a story about Nike, but the whole show's not about that. I'm going to move on now. So, do a little sound check. Cool. And start this up. Start the show. And no, by the way, that's why the show's so late. I was at the dealership like almost all day. And I spent a good chunk of the day dreading going to the dealership, because I thought like, I'm going to go up there and sit up there for like 3 hours, because one, I suspected they did not have the part that I needed. I was correct. I'm not getting the new part until like Tuesday. What I did luck out and find out though is that the part is only going to cost me $27, and they're going to do the labor part for free, which I think the manager didn't realize how difficult that was going to be, because they have to remove like basically the entire fender or the material. They have to remove the plates that are protecting that part of the chassis and install a new part on it. But you know, they're the experts, not me. Maybe they know something differently than I do. Yeah, so it's called a striker plate. If you've ever had it like get any kind of loose on your car, do not just use a screwdriver. Get a torque wrench, or find somebody who has a torque wrench and have them torque wrench it close for you, because you can get more pressure on it and you can prevent it from absolutely falling off, like what happened with mine. Apparently, it got loose, which is not my fault. It was a manufacturer design, because apparently that's like a really common thing with Volkswagens. But I got like an extreme version of it where it's like I kept tightening it with a screwdriver and it needed a torque wrench so it would latch on and not move or whatever. And eventually it shook free while I was driving. And then the plastic part on the back of the striker plate that dissipates the force when you close the door on it broke. And then it created enough space for the striker plate that has screws in it to pull out of the threading on the door and fly with my door open. Luckily for me, the plate got stuck in the latch, like how my door latches onto it. Luckily, it got stuck in there, so I was able to take it out and keep it, because I would have been totally screwed if I did not have my original striker plate, because they did not have it in stock, and they wouldn't have it until Tuesday. They're ordering it, and like there's a dealership in Dallas that apparently has it. So shout out to Volkswagen Momentum for the first time ever. I've been up there like 7 times, and people have a really good habit of making me feel bad about like things that are not that serious on my car. Like one time they quoted me accidentally that I needed to replace like a $1,700 part on my car, when in actuality it was just like needed a software update. And because the software update was telling them, or the previous software was telling them that like a system on my car had malfunctioned, and that just wasn't true. So fun. Anyway, let's get the show started and talk sports. And of course, you know, we don't actually start the show off by talking about sports, but don't tell the other people that. Don't tell the new people that. Let's get it popping here in a couple of seconds. Trying to reduce the number of ums when I speak and all that jazz like that. So we're going to work on that personally. I'm going to need you to keep me, I just did it again. I'm going to need you guys to keep me accountable on that. I'm trying to become a better broadcaster. Starting the show in 3, 2, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between, I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. This is the Broke Boys Sports Podcast, and I have a strange feeling that the people who are listening to the stream, due to something that happened with OBS, cannot actually hear the intro music. So shout out to them for sticking with the show. We were going to have DeMontre Tuggle on the show. He is a running back from Channelview, Texas, that was able to sign a contract with the Chicago Bears, and now he's an NFL player after having 0 offers in high school. I interviewed him on Tuesday. Was going to do it live on the stream, but haven't figured out how to use the NDI settings for Zoom, and I didn't figure it out until after the interview was over or whatever. And and it panned out pretty well for me because I just recorded the interview, and now I can upload it tomorrow, and it'll be like I did 2 things in one day, and I'm sure that'll end up on a lot of people's feeds or whatever. But anyway, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. We got geek news to get to here. If you're new to the show, that's where I talk about something geeky. And then we have best of the best. We have worst of the worst. We do not have a media suggestion this week because the media suggestion was going to be the interview that I did. So I'll be electing to not do media suggestions this week, even though my media suggestion is going to be pretty obvious because it actually comes up in about a week ago, which in about a week ago, we are going to do a quick review, or like I'll do a synopsis of each one of the schedule release media things that each team did, because most teams did a video, some teams did not. And we'll talk about which ones did and did not do a video. But yeah, we got that going on. I'll give you my top 3 out of that category. Then we'll talk about the NBA playoffs, and the show is going to be over because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm trying to get through this real quick. And I feel like I got a lot of stuff to say, and I have more than enough time to say it, and I'm not going to beat around the bush like I normally do. So people tend to like the faster pods anyway, especially when it comes to getting ready for the weekend. So we move on to nerd news, which if it's actually been renamed to geek news. If you're not familiar with it, it is the end of an era when it comes to actually a couple things. So the show in question here is DC's Legends of Tomorrow. It is a show that is about time travel. And the way I'll phrase it is, if you haven't seen a single episode of it, it's like 7 seasons. It's 7 seasons in. There are a lot of characters that shift in and out of the roster, and that's kind of the point of it. It's like the Suicide Squad, but like people really don't die. They just choose to go back to their original time and live out the rest of their lives and stuff like that, while other people remain on the team looking for something that helps them feel more complete. And it's one of those things where it's like the characters are searching for something, and they're okay with being away from the world that they live in because of that thing that makes them incomplete or makes them feel incomplete. And a lot of it is perspective on life. There's if you're not familiar with DC's, this is an easy one because it happens early on in the show, but there's a superhero called Firestorm. Typically in the DC comics, it is displayed kind of Wonder Twin style. This is a superhero that is a combination of 2 people who have the power of the superhero within them, and they have to combine together into one entity to make the Firestorm that is the character, which is like really strong. But in DC's Legends of Tomorrow, they used a more updated version where the 2 people who are partnered together, one is a young black man from the year 2020 or 2019 or something like that, and the other one is an older white gentleman who's like a college professor from the year 2019, and actually his name is like Victor Garber. He's very famous. He was on the show for like 3 seasons, and eventually they had to, move on to the next thing kind of deal going on. But Victor Garber is I listened to a podcast called Fat Man Beyond, which is hosted by Kevin Smith and Mark Bernard. And Mark Bernard is a brilliant man. Kevin Smith smokes a lot of weed, has some really good opinions, and he has some decent opinions. But for the most part, he's just a guy who is a big fan of all the geek stuff. And it shines through, and I really enjoy listening to that aspect of it. Sometimes they get like they don't get deep enough into some of the stuff that I want to talk about when it comes to geekdom or whatever. Anyway, I mentioned that because Kevin Smith has asked Victor Garber, he's a character in the show DC's Legends of Tomorrow, to come on his podcast multiple times, and their agent is like, no, he like actually doesn't like you, and he just doesn't understand why. And I'm like, oh man, that's a tough feeling, because it's like they won't tell you why they don't like you or whatever it is. And Victor Garber is somebody that Kevin Smith looked up to for a long time. So yeah, that's how it goes, man. That's how it goes sometimes in life, kids. That's another life lesson for you. But nonetheless, DC's Legends of Tomorrow is a part of, and a lot of people are speculating that most of the DC shows that exist right now are going to get canceled, or they're going to finish their run, because there is a progression of these characters that are, okay. There's a merger happening. CW's being purchased by Warner Brothers, and these shows either are going to get moved to some other platform, or they're going to be just completely done away with because they cost a shit ton of money to make. DC's Legends of Tomorrow, like I mentioned before, is a time traveling TV show, so there's a lot of effort in terms of costuming and directing and all that kind of stuff like that, shooting on location. I would suggest, if you have not, check out all the episodes where you can find them. I have no idea. I think it's CW Online, because every single channel has a streaming service that you can just type in your cable information for. It's your login to pay your whatever you use to log in to pay your cable bill. It is definitely worth the watch. It is one of the best superhero shows that I've seen on TV ever, and it was a group of heroes that I had never heard of, and I went in completely cold a couple of years ago, and me and my friend Beth found ourselves like really attached to these goofy ass characters that we knew were never gonna make it to like having their own movie. These are characters that are like off the wall, like kind of well developed, but kind of not at the same time. There are characters that are that change throughout the years of the show, and then of course like there's introspection, because at some point each one of the characters has to make a tough decision to like leave the team, right? And the roster is constantly rotating, and that has a big effect on like the dynamics of the team, which is of course how life works, right? And you would never suspect a show about a bunch of heroes, or quote unquote heroes in some cases, that you've never heard of to have that kind of impact on you. And I felt like there have been multiple times where I've watched Legends of Tomorrow and I've just been like, this doesn't make sense how this show means like this much to me in terms of like the depth and the story and the point that they're trying to make throughout the course of the show. But here we are. That has happened on multiple occasions when I watched Legends of Tomorrow, and I expect it to continue to happen. So they've got one more season and then they're out of here, and I just wanted to give them a shout out, because they were a hero show that I had no reference for, which is like super rare in a lot of situations, because I tend to watch and read a lot of not just like straight up comics, but I watch a lot of comic stuff on YouTube, and I read Wikipedias and Marvelpedia and all that kind of stuff like that. So DC's Legends of Tomorrow is one of the many examples of how the cinematic universe of DC may be losing severely to the cinematic version of Marvel, but the DC TV shows have dominated without question. Like the reason that Marvel can make those superhero movies is because of the success of previous DC TV shows. Case in point, everybody makes fun of Adam West's Batman, but that was one of the most popular shows in the country at one point, and it's still referenced to this day. And Adam West is long dead, right? DC's Legends of Tomorrow continues that same legacy. Same thing with the Batgirl show that happened even when they changed the main lead or whatever. And then of course the Flash show really resonated with a lot of people. A lot of people actually are really upset that Ezra Miller is the Flash. They thought it was going to be the guy from the TV show because they had grown attached to that guy. He kind of has like if you didn't think he was the Flash initially, he has won over a lot of people. And well, if Ezra Miller keeps doing the stuff that they're doing, because I think Ezra's like non-binary, and I'm trying to do better about that. But they keep doing the stuff that they're doing in Hawaii, it's gonna be. They might be in the line for another Flash. We'll find out. Anyway, that's all I got for Geek News. Shout out to DC's Legends of Tomorrow. They brought me many moments of joy, and I hope they can bring you some too. Check it out. Best of the best, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, we build this show as the best and the worst that sports has to offer every single week. So, of course, I have to have a segment called the best of the best and the worst of the worst. This week's best of the best is Jerry Hughes. If you have no idea who Jerry Hughes is, don't worry. I will inform you. Jerry Hughes is a former defensive end and lead pass rusher for the Buffalo Bills. He is from Sugar Land, Texas, which means he is just outside of Houston, Texas, which is still Houston, Texas. If you don't know, Sugar Land is a well-claimed suburb of Houston, so he's a Houstonian, right? He went to a school that I used to cover. He didn't go to the school that I covered that he went to like as a high schooler when he was in high school. I was not covering him in high school, but I covered subsequently his high school after he had like long graduated, because he got drafted in 2010. I graduated from high school in 2010, and I didn't start covering Fort Bend sports out here in Houston until 2015 or something like that. So like long after he was gone or whatever. But I remember looking up famous alums because I needed to be able to reference people when I was doing the radio show, when I was doing my play-by-play and stuff like that, to talk about famous people who went to the show or who went to the different schools and stuff like that. And Jerry Hughes was the guy that was like the preeminent person that went to what people call Fort Bend, Austin. It's Stephen F. Austin High School. They're the Bulldogs out of Sugar Land, Texas. They call them Fort Bend, Austin to designate them by the area that they're in because guess what? There are a lot of high schools named after Stephen F. Austin. And as a matter of fact, there are a lot of high schools named after Stephen F. Austin who have the mascot that is the Bulldog. And it is, as you suspected, the Georgia Bulldog logo, just not copyrighted version, right? I've always wondered how that works. Like, is it just like some unspoken deal where it's like, hey, look, we're high school. Don't sue us for using the logo that you guys use. We're not trying to like sell your gear and make money off of it or anything like that. Because there's a lot of, I mean, like every NFL logo is used by a high school or a middle school. So I don't know what the deal with that is. Maybe they just don't care. Or maybe they find it like, maybe they think it's like free advertisement because there's been some cases. There's a school that's down the street from my house that is the Vikings, and it is the Minnesota Vikings logo. And it's like verbatim. The colors are like purple and gold and everything. Sorry. That hair is scratching my nose. Anyway, if you're listening on the podcast, don't worry. I explained it on the stream. If you have not checked out the stream on Twitch or YouTube, you definitely should. Anyway, going back to this homecoming thing, Jerry Hughes from Sugar Land, Texas, a.k.a. Houston, Texas. He was a 2-star recruit coming out of high school. He went to TCU where he was coached by, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time saying his name. Anyway, he's one of those many guys that went to TCU that he started off as a linebacker and he ended up as like a defensive end because they do that thing where they're like, we take like quote unquote low star athletes, guys who have like tons of potential and maximize their potential while they're at TCU. Because when you do that for guys, or when you do that with guys, they tend to stay for all 4 years, right? To fully fill out their entire body and also get as much film as possible because they know that they're not competing on the big TV deal or they're not competing on ESPN every single weekend. But I wouldn't even say that for TCU because they kind of are every single weekend. Anyway, when Jerry Hughes went to TCU, they were not. But yeah, he went to TCU, got drafted in the year 2020. He was 2020. I'm sorry. He got drafted in the year 2010. He was the 31st draft pick in the 2010 draft. So he's a first round pick. It's kind of crazy. He played defensive end all 12 years that he's been in the NFL so far. And as a matter of fact, the last 4 years, you could argue he's been the best pass rusher for the Buffalo Bills in this time where they've been trying to make this run to win the Super Bowl by putting all their chips out there. And recently, they paid a shit ton of money, the most money that any non-quarterback player in the NFL is making, to Von Miller, right? That means that if you're a defensive end, you're probably not going to have too much money to go around or a spot to be even able to compete for. And so Jerry Hughes, who was a free agent, decided to sign with the Houston Texans, and he is coming back to his hometown team, which started, he got drafted in 2010. The Texans didn't exist until 2022. So the Texans only existed, basically they didn't exist when he was in high school and they existed when he got out of college. So that was pretty funny. Anyway, he's back here with the hometown team. The even funnier aspect of it is Jerry Hughes is not only joining up with his old teammate Mario Addison, he'll be on the same defensive line as a young man by the name of Ross Blacklock, who went to Elkins High School, which is in the same school district that Jerry Hughes went to, and they are multiple generations apart. Ross Blacklock is in his 3rd year in the NFL, and Jerry Hughes is in his 13th, right? They are both from the same part of town. Like, they're both from the same part of Houston playing for the hometown team. It's kind of dope. I thought that was kind of cool, and that's why it's best of the best. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we take our first hydration break here, and I'm going to try and fix the music setting on the stream real quick so you guys can hear the stream music. And when we come back, we'll do Worst of the Worst. Worst of the Worst is going to be a doozy, as it always is. We're doing Laying in Your Arms by Christina Gukas for 2 minutes and 48 seconds right here on the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. Yo, are we back? Is that song done? The song is done. Laying in Your Arms is done. Ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on. We fixed the audio thing going on, so you guys should be able to hear the audio when you're listening to the stream. By the way, don't forget, follow me on Twitter, FB_playbook. Follow me on Instagram at the Ashton Forever. And then, of course, like and subscribe, baby, on YouTube and on Twitch, Broke Boy Sports. You just type in Broke Boy Sports Podcast. By the way, we back to being on every single platform in terms of streaming. We back on Spotify. We back on iHeartRadio. We're back on Google Podcasts. I saw it myself and I was like, oh man, it feels kind of good to be like back in my own podcast feed. You know what I mean? A lot of different podcasts go a lot of different ways, and your boys out here just trying to be one of the best that's ever done it. And we are going to get there one podcast at a time. We're on episode 189, by the way. Shout out to everybody who's been with us all this time. Worst of the worst, ladies and gents. This is actually about a dream coming true for one Kyrie Irving. So Kyrie's dream work environment has always been one where he gets to pick and choose when he shows up to work. Stephen A. Smith is taking a liking to making jokes about how Kyrie doesn't want to show up for work, right? I just want to point out that worst of the worst this week is about Kyrie Irving getting everything he has ever wanted. He wanted to play in the NBA while unvaccinated, despite how damaging like COVID has been for many groups of people. I would also like to correct something. I listened to Bomani Jones's podcast called The Right Time with Bomani Jones, and he keeps referencing how Kyrie Irving went to the Native American reservation that I guess his people are from, or went to a Native American reservation or an indigenous people reservation. And I just wanted to point, he pointed out like, oh man, that's messed up that he went to that reservation and he knew that he was unvaccinated. He could spread it to those people. And I just wanted to point out that actually, from what I understand, based off of like not only research I had done beforehand, but also like seeing multiple tweets about it, there was a group of people who were like, when the vaccine became available, they was on that shit. I'll let you guess. The people who knows, you know what? The people who know what being vulnerable to a disease can do to your people and your culture. Yeah, the group of people who were first in line and really leading the charge when it came to getting that vaccine to make sure that they were protected against COVID-19, those people on that reservation, ladies and gentlemen, from what I understand. So when people were making stuff about like, oh, Kyrie Irving is basically like the yellow fever blankets or whatever, and I'm like, nah, dog. Like the people on the reservation, they stay strapped up. You know what I mean? I'm sure the booster numbers are like crazy high. I saw one thing like the Navajo Nation tweeted out that they said like 99% of their people are vaccinated on the reservation because they know how damaging those diseases can be. And on top of that, like how difficult medical care to combat those diseases can be to access, especially when you're on the reservation. Anyway. Kyrie Irving's dream work environment, like we talked about before, he wanted to play while he was unvaccinated in the NBA. He actually got to do that part-time because the Nets got so desperate during the initial COVID outbreak, and then eventually became a full-time thing because a lot of people started calling New York out for some of its backward ass, because New York was basically trying to do the whole like, oh, we're enforcing masks, but we're not enforcing masks all the time. It has to be like an all or nothing proposition, you know what I mean? And they were trying to do like the both sides situation. So they ended up being poorly prepared and ended up having those loopholes that Kyrie Irving pointed out when he went to a Nets game as a spectator without his mask on, but then went into the locker room as a spectator without his mask on. But we also know that as an NBA player, if he was going to be on the bench inactive, he would have to have his mask on, right? And there's no difference other than like being the person that pays money to keep this business going. And then it comes off like it was kind of a charade to a certain degree. It comes off like the person who made the rule actually doesn't care about like what the rule is supposed to do. Anyway, he wanted to create a super team. And so he went out and recruited Kevin Durant, who recruited James Harden, I'm assuming in some way, shape, or form. They went out and got, both of those former MVPs, and Kevin Durant, a guy who's arguably the number one basketball player on the planet any given year. They got DeAndre Jordan for their super team. They got Joe Harris, who's one of the best three-point shooters in the entirety of the NBA. And then when that wasn't working out, they traded away James Harden to get Seth Curry and Ben Simmons and a flurry of other players as well, and traded away draft picks. That, all that. Kyrie Irving wanted to be on the super team, right? All to get swept in the first round of the playoffs, I might add. He was upset that the Kyrie 8 design he was upset about Nike's Kyrie 8 design of his shoe. Did not get approved by him because he didn't like what they posted and put out. And now that's not going to be a problem for him either, because allegedly Nike doesn't plan to re-sign Kyrie to his next deal. There are two things that this does. One of them affects me. That's not great. So this makes Kyrie the martyr that he wants to be and claims that he wants to be all the time on it. Not that he claims that he wants to be, but he wants to make sure that his position is taken as staunchly in opposition to what is perceived oppression, as opposed to, you know, things that are good for helping other people in society, whatever. He wants to be a martyr, like, so bad. He wants to be the person that gets taken down and inspires other people to create the uprising, right? I'm sure and when it came to the vaccine thing, I'm sure that all the people that he attracted and that he found supporting him were great people that he really wanted to be associated with. Anyway, he also put in danger my favorite line of basketball shoes for Nike. I actually have like 3 pairs of Kyrie's, and they all like fit perfectly and work really well for my body type to be able to play basketball and not feel like I'm in a ton of pain or anything like that. So, you know, really shout out to Kyrie for potentially fucking me over somehow. I got roped into this that because Kyrie doesn't want to get vaccinated and then show up to work and stuff like that. Whatever. I just want to point this out. Kyrie Irving got everything he has ever wanted. I always like saying that line because it's true. There's been very few times where Kyrie has wanted something, he has not gotten it. And it gets him into this situation. And of course, he'll sit there and tell you, because he did on the Instagram Live at the beginning of this season, which seems like eons ago. He did at the beginning of this season talking about how he's like, I got bread, I got money, I'm not worried about that. And so obviously, he wants to make his point, and he also wants to point out like what oppression looks like, even if like the oppression is just like people reacting to the choice that he made, which is similar to like somebody setting a rule and then Kyrie reacting to that rule and choosing not to obey it, and then the consequences of not obeying that rule come to bite him in his ass. Anyway, so he's about to lose money with this deal for Nike. Apparently they want to keep him around as an athlete for sure, and I was like, of course they want to, because like there's no telling, like legitimately the Nets could be the team that wins the NBA championship next year for all we know, and Kyrie Irving could be a part of that because he could be a full-time player. And this whole debacle that went on this season can be in the rearview mirror as they go out there and make a championship run. Because there's one thing that I've never denied in all this time that we sat here and talked about Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving is a person clearly of a unique mindset for sure. I wouldn't say of a different mindset. He has a unique mindset and approach to everything. I would also point out that Kyrie Irving is immensely talented as a basketball player, and that's why we're even having this conversation and talking about him, right? Because there are a lot of people who hold the exact same viewpoints of Kyrie Irving that are nowhere near good enough to have what they do for a profession put on television. That doesn't make them less important. It's just also recognizing that Kyrie Irving is put on a platform for a reason. So we move on to what's going to be my favorite segment today. About a week ago, which, if in case you guys forgot, is about like the viciousness of how stories change, or something that we forgot about last week and how it's changed this week, right? Last week, I was pretty fucking annoyed with the NFL schedule hype that was going on. Everybody's talking about the NFL schedule this, NFL schedule that, NFL schedule this. It was super annoying because it was like there were multiple teams who posted information that we already knew as if we didn't know it. Like there was a lot of teams who posted, oh, these are our opponents for this upcoming season. It's like, yeah, we knew that because when every team got eliminated, whether it was prior to the start of the playoffs or in the playoffs, the first post that every team put out afterwards was like, oh, these are our opponents for the 2022 season. And they reposted those, and a lot of people took that as like, oh, look, the parts of the schedule is getting released. And some of the stuff was like slowly getting leaked out in terms of like the primetime games that were going on. And that happened over the course of like multiple days throughout the course of this week. A lot of it stemmed from NFL Network, and most of it was super fucking annoying to me because like I honestly, man, there are 3 people who give a shit about the schedule. It is the players, gamblers who want to take out futures bets, which is not as many people as I think a lot of us would think it is, and then NFL only podcasts / radio hosts / podcasters that do not talk about baseball. right? Like, or don't talk about hockey, or don't talk about the NBA. Even if you talk about the NBA, you can't talk about just the NBA on a general podcasting platform or whatever. So you need to talk about stuff like, oh, let's look at the Panthers schedule for the year 2022 and predict what their record's going to be, without having any context of like how each one of these teams is going to be formatted, who's going to have that one horrific injury in preseason and during the preseason games, or by the time that they end up playing you in week 16, right? Like, there are like legitimately people who are sitting and looking at the schedule and being like, I know exactly what this team is going to do, and I'm predicting they're going to lose in week 16, and it is May of 2022. Because that's worked out for people. And honestly, man, like, in the spirit of fandom, I don't even think that's just fun. Like, I don't think that, like, it's not fun, because there has been no time ever where, except for the people who like to have the hypothetical arguments that don't have an answer to them, there's been no time ever where being like, oh, sports on paper is more fun than actually, like, anticipating sports being played. And that has been the most frustrating part, where it's like, this is the same boring ass trap that people fall into every single year. It's like Mount Rushmore season. That's why Pardon My Take does it, right? Because there's sportscasters all over the country who waste your time trying to make like the Mount Rushmore of great basketball players. So they, to spoof it on Pardon My Take, do like the Mount Rushmore of condiments, right? That's a huge deal. And I'm sure there are also like other radio hosts that now have figured out, or like that are young enough to listen to Pardon My Take, and they're just doing Mount Rushmore season on their show and getting a ton of conversation amongst people, right, during the dead period of the season, which, by the way, because of the adjustment of COVID to every single schedule in terms of sports and all that kind of stuff like that, which, by the way, I think reverts back to normal next year for every single sport, although Major League Baseball is on a weird schedule because of the lockout and all that kind of stuff like that. But I think sports tsunamis are going to be over, which is like, the sports tsunamis is where like 7 sports collide on one singular weekend, right? I think that's over like next year, and it happened like 4 times in the past like 2 years, and it continues to happen where like all 4 major sports are being played at the same time, and it's difficult to keep up with, especially if you're like a WNBA fan right now. Like, the WNBA season just started, NBA playoffs are going on, the NHL playoffs are going on. There's multiple Game 7s coming up on Saturday and Sunday, and to go along with it, like the UFC, which is constantly going. There's big boxing matches that happen during the summer, right? Like, that's always the big thing. That's why we just came off Cinco de Mayo, where Canelo lost. Like, it's a sports tsunami. The Kentucky Derby is happening. Like, the Preakness is coming up, even though Rich Strike is not going to compete at the Preakness, so there will be no Triple Crown winner this week. Anyway, I don't know why I got on that diatribe. Last week, I got super annoyed by the stuff that was going on with the NFL schedule. One of the things that I hate the absolute most is the people who spend all this time like predicting what the team is going to do based off the schedule. And then this week, I remembered it's 2022, and that the social media teams for every single team in the NFL, it's got some pretty talented people on it. And so they can turn something like, hey, here's a list of teams that you're going to play next season, and make some really creative stuff. So I actually went through and watched every single video where there was like, okay, so there's like, we'll get to it when we get to it, but I went through and I watched every single one of the schedule announcement videos and kind of summarized them a little bit for you. And I can tell you the top 3 that I have already. So we'll start with the Lions. The Lions is the one that, like, for some, by the way, side note, Antoine Randall is a coach for the Lions. Did not know that. But the Lions had one of the more popular ones because they used the urban survival tactics guy that does all those crazy moves to be like, if somebody pulls a gun on you, this is what you do. You put your finger in between their finger and the trigger, being able to go backwards and all this kind of stuff like that. And apparently, you know, everybody, like the Uriah Hall, who's a UFC fighter, literally just plays his videos on his Instagram, and he's just like, this guy is going to get people killed. And like the most popular TikToker on the planet, like, stitched this guy's videos where he's just like, hey, he tries to pull off one of his moves. He pretends to pull off one of his moves, and then the screen goes black and he's in heaven because he got shot or whatever. But yeah, that's like a real thing. Like Urban Survival Tactics guy did the Detroit Lions schedule release video, and every single person was like a player, or like they had like a helmet from the other team, or they had like a hat on from the other team, and he did like a simulation of like, if this dolphin tries to attack you, what you do is you take the fish that you've been holding in your pocket out and you use it to distract him, and he throws it over that direction. The guy with the dolphin hat looks at the fish getting thrown, and then he gets hit in the back of the head. And he's like, grab the wrist, hit him in the back of the head, and move on to the next week. And so he does a bunch of that. Check it out. It's kind of all right. A lot of people said that's like the best one, and I heavily disagree because the best one was like really obvious, and it was the LA Chargers one. So if you didn't see it, they did a anime themed schedule release, and a lot of people. This is okay. So there's two reasons why I love this so much. One, because most of you guys. Most people in the realm of sports think they know anime because they've like seen Naruto and stuff like that, or they've seen Dragon Ball Z, and all the animes that were referenced in the video that the Chargers made were like none of the super generic ones that everybody talks about, but they're really popular within the realm of anime. So the opening sequence, like they did like an opening theme of an anime, but like each one of the segments of the theme was a game that they have coming up on their schedule. So they did like a nod to Voltron. They did a nod to Gundam, which was a Justin Herbert Gundam with Brandon Staley inside of it, like manning the controls. And then there's a Patrick Mahomes Gundam, and it's got Andy Reid inside of it controlling it or whatever. There was that one. There's an Attack on Titan one where it is obviously the Tennessee Titans is the opponent, and they have Derrick Henry as the Colossal Titan. If you've watched Attack on Titan, you know exactly which one that one is. It's the one that's like twice the height of these gigantic walls that have been built by the character's group of people. And the Colossal Titan is Derrick Henry, and on the wall it says AJ was here, and it says instead of, because the Titans use the phrase tighten up, they crossed out the Titan part and put bolt up because that's what the Chargers use or whatever. They had references to My Hero Academia. They had a hentai reference in terms of the Browns, and they chose to censor it, but everybody else got the joke and they understood it. I went and looked at an article where they described it as like, oh, the Chargers made their own anime, and I was like, wow, you are so fucking off. And also, this one was hands down, without question, the best one. There's a lot of funny ones. There's a lot of good ones that were really well done. There's a lot of really corny ones, but this one was the best one through and through because they actually had to like do the drawings for each one of these animes, and they all had like really, if you don't watch the anime, you don't get it. And a lot of people in the comments were actually really cool and like catching all the references, and there were so many. Like, for instance, there's this one anime called Food Wars where it is literally about cooking and like battle cooking, like you talk about like Beat Bobby Flay on the Food Network, but an anime version of it. So it's like way more dramatic. It goes into like the science of cooking food and how different techniques and work, stuff like that. And then the characters have foodgasms, and they like their clothes fly off and all that kind of stuff like that. Check it out. It's really educational, and it's actually, like I said, there are a lot of like hentai naked girls in it or whatever, but the anime itself is like actually really educational, and the storyline is actually really good. But they had, instead of, because in Food Wars the main character does this thing where he takes off his like he has a headband and it's wrapped around his wrist, and when it's time to get serious, like how Ash Ketchum turns his hat around, he rips the thing off of his arm and he ties the giant headband around his head. And they did that, except it was Russell Wilson, and it said let Russ cook because the joke was Food Wars. And ironically enough, and for some reason, there's a way that you can connect multiple of these schedule release videos, because you can almost say like they're like in the schedule verse to a certain degree. So the Chargers one, they had the let Russ cook part of the anime intro, and then when you go and watch the Denver Broncos schedule release video, they make the same joke. Like Russell Wilson is back there cooking at one point, and they're like, yes, you get it. It's like the let Russ cook joke kind of deal. But yeah, it's the same joke, whatever. There's a lot of really good ones. They take some tropes from anime and apply it to the NFL, and it's done flawlessly. And it's a great way to weed out like a lot of there's a lot of NFL players that are like, oh, I'm a huge anime fan, and then they only tell you about how they watch Naruto and Dragon Ball Z. And it's like there's like a lot more anime that are better than both of those out there. And not to be that guy, both of those are great anime. They really are. They really entertained and reached a lot of people. But there are a lot of animes that have nothing to do with fighting and violence and all that kind of stuff like that have a lot of deep resonance. And then there's other like really good and better fighting animes that are out there. Like they have a My Hero Academia reference. They have a Demon Slayer reference in there all at the same time. They have a One Punch Man reference. Every anime that's like mainstream, they have a reference to it, except like Full Metal Alchemist, I think. It's definitely worth watching it multiple times. I've watched it 3 times already, and I enjoy it every single time. The comments are really informative. If you haven't had an opportunity, if you don't get some of the references, the comments has every single one of them. And also the Chargers made a reference to the Urban Meyer situation. They had, I think it was like a Mob Psycho reference where like there's a guy with a cat head sitting in a bar in the same clothes that Urban Meyer wore when he was like fingering that chick. So it was pretty funny. Definitely check it out. It is worth every single second that you have to watch it multiple times over. So shout out to them. Anyway, shout out to the Chargers for absolutely dominating this category. And the rest of these we're going to power through, and I'll tell you the jokes that were in the comments as well. The 49ers did a schedule reveal video that mimicked the opening sequence of Yellowstone, the really popular TV show. I think it's on FX or something like that. Anyway, the fans hated it. Like they hated it because it was like somebody went through because they did symbolic references for all the teams that they were playing instead of just writing the name of the teams on the screen or whatever. And they used a little filter or whatever. And so somebody went through and they just wrote the name of the object that was in the screen. So like their week 1 they were playing the Downtowners or something like that, and this week 4 they were playing the Tumbleweeds. But definitely go check it out so you can suffer just like I did. The Saints got really creative, and I think this is like a top 3 one for me because a lot of white people got to write articles about which ones were the best, and they of course would naturally skip over the ones that are pivotal to like rap and hip hop history. So the Saints got Juvenile and Choppa to do a fake game night with Cameron Johnson and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you know, the corner that does a really good job of talking shit to people and like making them lose their mind. They play charades for people to guess the team that is playing that week. And at one point, Juvenile, they're playing the Panthers because they're in the NFC South, and Juvenile like gets down on all 4 legs and like walks around and like makes noise, even though he's not supposed to in charades. It's still funny as fuck because it's Juvenile, like one of the, you know, like pivotal parts of hip hop history, on his hands and knees growling like a panther. The Patriots had like a bottom 3 schedule release video, hands down. They had Ernie Adams, who's like really important to the organization and has been for decades at this point. They wrote down the schedule on a dry erase board and had Ernie Adams read it, and he gave like little tidbits about like what the game would be like at that point during the season weather-wise as he went through the schedule. So it was like kind of on brand for the Patriots, no lie, it was kind of on brand for the Patriots, but nonetheless it was boring as hell to me because it was literally just an old white guy with a suit on reading the schedule off of a dry erase board and trying to make it exciting even for him. So it didn't work all that well. The Seattle Seahawks have a top 3 hands down. So I got the Chargers at number 1. Seahawks might be 3 or 4, and I might be a little biased because, you know, they're my team or whatever. They're my secondary team. They are so wrong for what they did. They fake released a schedule. So before I talk about what they did, I want to point out that the Detroit video, at one point, because the Detroit the Detroit Lions play the Seahawks, and their little thing that they did with the urban survival tactical guy. By the way, they made a really funny joke about when they play the Jaguars. They're like, "Oh, you're pretty familiar with urban survival tactics." Urban Meyer, yeah. Anyway, but they did that one. But the guy who was representing the Seahawks was holding a football, and if you know the brand that NFL footballs are, it's a Wilson. And the urban survival tactical guy was like, "Oh, you're not playing with the Wilson this season." And he takes the ball, throws it off screen, and then hands him a Nerf football. And the funny part is, in the Seahawks video, in the schedule verse, if you will, this is not set up. This is like hands down. They probably just walk around with this ball. But Drew Lock is holding a Nerf football while in the Seahawks video, which shouldn't be surprising. It's an NFL locker room. I'm sure there's plenty of Nerf footballs around, but it was really funny that kind of connects together with what the Detroit Lions one had going on with it. Anyway, the Seahawks released a fake schedule. And this is the series of things that the schedule had on it that legitimately made people lose their fucking mind. They cooked up the worst schedule ever, and I think they did something where like they travel 30,000 miles in the course of a single 30,000 air miles in the course of a season. A lot of that is of course going to be Germany, because the Seahawks are playing in Germany. They had the Seahawks playing on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Quandre Diggs was there, and Quandre Diggs used to play for the Lions back in the day, and he pointed out how he played for the Lions for 8 years, and he was like, yo, I come to Seattle, and I finally get away from having to play on Thanksgiving, and then the second year that I'm here, I got to play against them, I got to play back on Thanksgiving again, and Quandre Diggs actually got so upset with the fake schedule that they showed him or whatever, that he called his wife and was like, look, baby, I just work here. I don't make the decisions. And everybody in the room started laughing or whatever. By the way, they got Will Dissly, the tight end, to help them spread the lie about the rumor, to coax people into going into the room where the fake schedule was at. And he helped them. He had like a camera on to like record the lies that he told his teammates or whatever. Anyway, Quandre Diggs looked at the schedule and he called his girlfriend and was just like, he called his wife and he was like, look, we got to play on Thanksgiving and Christmas. She was like, what? The other big lie that they told was that they don't get a bye week after the Germany game. So, like, they go to Germany, come back. They go to Germany, play Sunday, and then they have a game the following Sunday on this fake schedule that they made. They have another point where they're on the road for a month straight on the fake schedule. They had them change a shit ton of time zones throughout the course of the season. So they went from playing in the Central Time Zone in New Orleans to playing LA the following week. They played New Orleans at 11 a.m. and then they played LA the following week on Thursday Night Football at like 7 o'clock at night, which is like 6 o'clock or whatever. They had at one point, they played 3 games in 11 days. They had them playing at the Hall of Fame game. That was a lie. So if you guys don't know, the Hall of Fame game is played at that Canton High School stadium, and historically it has been like the most maligned and hated stadium in all of the NFL, because the field itself is not NFL quality, and usually the time of year when the Hall of Fame game is going on, the field is like absolute garbage. Remember that one year where they had to like spray paint the grass green, and it created so they spray painted the grass green and the dirt patches green because they were like, no, there's no grass on this field. It's just a giant dirt patch or whatever. And they go out there and they're like, oh, the paint froze overnight because of how cold it was. And then it basically turned the field into like an ice rink, and it was rock hard. So it was like, oh, if people play on this, they're going to like hurt ligaments, and like this is impossible for the NFL to play. And so it was a preseason game and they just canceled it. So yeah, that they told them that they were playing in that game on Sunday Night Football in winter. So they told them that they were like, yeah, you're playing in Canton, Ohio on Sunday Night Football because it's important and it's a historical site or whatever. And they had one of their assistants or somebody who works for the team call the office where the fake schedule was at and go over it with them, and they pretended to be somebody from the league office. And so the players were in the room like reacting to it while they were hearing it, and they're like, yo, what the fuck is going on? They gave them the earliest bye week. They gave them bye week for week 5. And like I said before, Quandre Diggs called his wife to tell her about how bad the schedule is. That's how good they got him, pretty good. And the way they revealed it is like Pete Carroll came in the room and he was like cursing and stuff or whatever about how the shitty the schedule was. And they're like, you're in here telling these guys lies. This schedule's not even real. And then they all started laughing. So anyway. Yeah, that's what's going on. That was what the Seahawks did. I thought it was really funny, and it was hands down a top 3. The Vikings did a really basic one. They got John Randall to do a bunch of like really corny, really funny representations. Like when they go to London, he gets like a cup of tea that's obviously empty. He's like, we're going over to jolly old England and London town. And it's just like over the top, like really dramatic shit. Like they play the Packers in week 1. John Randall's like one of the greatest Minnesota Vikings ever. And they play the Packers week 1 and he gets like a blowtorch and he melts some cheese on a grill. Like a little tiny slice of cheese. It was really weird. But nonetheless, this is a good opportunity for me to be like, hey, check out John Randall's Football Life episode. It's really good. John Randall's overcome a lot to become the person that he is today. You should definitely check it out. The Cardinals did the thing where they get the kids involved. So they did that thing that was popular on TikTok with that guy and his older dad where he shows them like the logos of the teams that they're playing. and he doesn't know the name of the teams because he's not an NFL fan, and now they're like really famous for that. Whatever. They're really famous for that. Shout out to them for getting out there and getting that bread. Anyway, he shows them the logo team and he says like flagman or something. And then the Patriots like actually printed that t-shirt out where they were like, oh, that's the flagman. And they actually printed and sold that t-shirt. Anyway, the Cardinals got a bunch of kids. I think they got like 4 kids, showed them the logo and had them guess what the team was, even though they're like too young to know the name of the NFL teams, right? So like one little girl got shown the the Las Vegas Raiders logo. And she said, that's Captain Hook. And I was like, all right, that's adorable content. People love kids. People think that kids are funny kind of deal. That probably went over with another audience. I was not the target demographic as a single man. I'm not single. I don't know why I just said that. As a man in a relationship who has no children, right? It's not funny. It wasn't funny to me. I get why it would be funny to others. I get why other people would enjoy it. I get why other NFL fans would enjoy it. The kids were adorable. Anyway. The Titans the Titans got to be like number 2 or number 3 on this one because they partnered with this company called Shift 4 to announce that every home game is going to highlight a black business on Jefferson Street in Nashville. And like legitimately, they're going to like drive business to black owned businesses in a historically black part of Nashville, a city that is known for its country music, which is predominantly dominated by white people. Even though the Tennessee Titans are not only have a big black customer base, right? They also have a ton of black players. Like one of the most famous players, or the most famous players in the history of that team, are Steve McNair and CJ2K, and now Derrick Henry, right? Like those are 3 black men. And they're doing a lot to give back to the black community in Nashville. I thought that was really cool, especially considering it's just a schedule release video. And they were like, hey guys, just so you know. And they did like a 7-minute long thing where they talked to like multiple business owners in the neighborhood. And those are probably going to be the businesses that they feature in those upcoming home game features or whatever. And it's going to be dope. Like it's going to be an opportunity for some black businesses that have been kept alive for a long time by the tight-knit community in and on Jefferson Street, which has like historical significance for being like a pathway to the west or something like that. They do an intro video. It's like a 7-minute long video. And honestly, they don't talk about football until like the last like 30 seconds. And they flash the schedule. And then the video ends. It's not like something where they're trying to make sure that you know which team you play. They like put effort into thinking about this. And speaking of putting effort in, maybe too much effort has been put in. Russ seems like he has already infected the Broncos. Their schedule release video was the cringiest, hands down. It was the number 1 cringiest schedule release video. So the premise of it is, in the schedule verse, Peyton Manning is the ultimate intern in the history of the Denver Broncos, and he is training the new intern that's coming in. You guessed it, Russell Wilson. So there's that. Russ is, he makes a bunch of jokes, he tries to make a bunch of jokes. There's a lot of cringy Office style, because I think that's what the goal was, to get like an Office style feel to a mockumentary type stuff. He looks into the camera and talks about, he's like, I'm really excited, learning a lot from Peyton Manning, and he does a bunch of stuff that Peyton did when he was with Denver, like putting his 1 foot in the pool while he's like looking at playbook type shit or something. Russ actually makes a really funny joke about how his new house has 4 bedrooms and 12 bathrooms. He's like, yeah, like who would be dumb enough to buy like a house with 12 bathrooms in it or something? Unless you were smart enough to be like, I know people are going to try and come over to my new house, and I can just be like, I don't have any room. I'm sorry. Shout out Russ on that one. Anyway, and of course, this is like one of those mini situations where it's like you try and clown Russ for being corny as fuck, but then you remember like he goes to sleep and wakes up next to Sierra, and he also wakes up and goes to sleep rich, than most people will ever be. So he can do whatever the fuck he wants. People immediately, I would say, save this to your phone. This is going to be one of those videos that people post 5 years later, and they're going to be like, yo, like, when the fuck did this happen? And they're going to be like, it was a schedule release video 5 years ago, because obviously this year they really stepped it up. They're continuing to... What's happening is like it's continuing to get more and more elaborate as time goes on, and it's gonna, reach a fever pitch at one point. Oh, by the way, like Adam Schefter randomly makes an appearance because they're like, you need to protect the schedule with your life, Russ. There are plenty of people who would love for it to fall into the wrong hands. And it's like Adam Schefter outside the Broncos facilities, like banging on the door or something like that. What else? Oh, by the way, ends in the cringiest way possible. They're like, hey, Russ, you've done everything right. You're like the best intern ever, man. You're going to make a great replacement for Peyton Manning. And then, by the way, massive disrespect to Drew Lock. Clearly a man who had a great legacy with the Broncos. Anyway, and also Trevor Siemian and Brock Osweiler. Anyway, they're like, where's the schedule at? And Russ is like, I don't know. And they're like, oh, shit. And like the new head coach is like, oh, he literally says, oh, shit, but they bleep it. And then John Elway is down the hall. He's like, I got it right here. Like, legitimately with, like, the craziest look on his face. Or, sorry, the wildest look on his face. He's on a miniature electric scooter and rides off down the hallway saying, let's ride. And then he drops the schedule. And that's how they reveal what the schedule is. Yeah. Moving on. The Steelers, like, this is like a top 5 corny one. The Steelers did a schedule bodyguard angle with Cam Hayward. They were like, Cam Hayward is an all-pro defensive tackle. He's perfect for defending the schedule and stopping people from talking about it. It has some fun. Like, basically the whole thing was like him hitting people or like showing up in weird quirky places and being like, don't talk about the schedule, or like taking, like, he at one point Najee Harris is on the phone with, or on FaceTime with Wiz Khalifa, and he's about to reveal like one of the games, and Cam Hayward like takes his phone and throws it over a fence, and it like cracks on the ground kind of deal, right? They do that. At one point, he's carrying the schedule. He trips and he falls. The schedule is up in the air. And then right before it touches the ground, an immaculate reception from Franco Harris. Later on, you find out that Franco Harris Ocean's 11'd the schedule out of the envelope while Cam Hayward wasn't looking, and then leaked it on the internet. And then it like ends with a dramatic no from Cam Hayward as they pan away or whatever. So yeah, if you were into that, like I said, it's like top 5 corny. It was really cringe. At one point, they get Cam in a pool, and some guys are walking by, and there are 2 Steelers employees talking about the schedule, and he pops up out of the pool, and he's like, shh, with his finger over his mouth. The Giants schedule release video, they had Eli Manning put their schedule together. By the way, another universal crossover. Eli calls Peyton during his little bit about how he's putting the schedule together, and Peyton answers the phone. He's like, I told you don't call me, Eli, I'm busy. And it's because he's busy being intern Peyton in the Denver Broncos schedule release video. So yeah, the schedule verse. Anyway, Eli has a tough time putting the schedule together, and then Brian Daboll, the new head coach, walks into the office, and he's like, hey, Eli, here's the new schedule, man. Just thought you want to see it or whatever. And he's got like the whole red thread connecting to each one of the teams kind of deal going on his wall. And Brian Daboll's like, oh, man, seems like you've been pretty busy. And he's like, yo, I guess so. And then Eli looks at the schedule, and he's like, oh, man, I was pretty close on that. So, yeah. The Texans had a top 5, probably top 10 when it's all said and done. They had me really worried initially because when you scroll down their feed, there's this one video that shows up first, and it's a 60-second version of their schedule where they just show like a football highlight and then put the team that they're playing in which week and the time and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was the release video, and I was going to lose my shit. And I was like, guys, we can't be bad at everything, right? We got to pick a struggle. So what it really was is that they had, and I thought this was pretty funny, they did the Disney Channel wands. So like the back in the day when people used to be like, hi, my name's let's go Logan Paul, because he actually used to be on Disney Channel, don't forget that. And he's like, hi, my name's Logan Paul and you're watching Disney Channel, and then they do the outline of the Mickey Mouse ears kind of deal. They did that with a twist on it. So they had Bun B and Paul Wall involved with it, but they had players from the team also, like Ross Blacklock was in this video, Paul Wall and Bun B, and they gave him a week, and they were like, draw the logo for this team using the Disney Channel wand. So this is funny because they cannot see what they're drawing, so they have to do like air drawings, and they're like, yeah, it's like that, and then when they trace over it in post or whatever, it looks terrible, looks nothing like the logo. Somebody got really close with the Titans logo, but it looked terrible. But yeah, it was pretty funny. It had Paul Wall in it, and it had Bun B. And for a while there, I thought they were like doing their like signature in cursive. That's how bad what they were doing was. But they did use the Disney Channel effect, and I thought that was funny. And they were like, you're watching the Texans channel for the 2022 NFL schedule type deal. So the Dolphins actually did one that was like really quick, but also like kind of creative, but also kind of boring at the same time. They printed their schedule on a t-shirt and called it the Dolphins 2022 schedule tour. Like how rock bands and music groups go all over the country and they sell merch and it has all of the different stops that they've been to. They did that, but with their schedule, and they showed like the left side of the t-shirt with the dates and the right side of the t-shirt with the dates. Funny part is, if you know where the Dolphins play, it's even like cornier because the Dolphins play in Hard Rock Stadium. Yeah. Like that. Like, it was stupid. But they did like a t-shirt print thing, and I don't know if they're going to like actually sell it on the website. I'm sure people would buy it, but it was like really quick. It didn't involve any of the players on the team. It involved like one of those screen print guys coming through, and they zoomed in on him doing the screen print of the t-shirt, and he hung it in one of the Dolphins locker room. It probably took him like 30 minutes to get it done, which is clutch because there's a lot of teams who put a lot more effort into their schedule release videos and were not even half as good as what the Dolphins put out. The Cowboys have a top three. I think I got 4 teams in my top 3 because I think I got the Saints in the top 3. I got the Chargers at number 1, staunchly at number 1. I got the Titans in the top 3 because I really like the initiative that they took to like, hey, this is just a stupid schedule release video. And they're like, no, this is actually an opportunity for us to announce something really cool when people are all paying attention to schedule release videos, right? It's the very few times where like people are like staunchly like going to the social media channel to be like, I need to see what the Titans did for this thing. And they took advantage of the eyeballs on it. So the Cowboys, I thought this was really cool because they did it big. They did it very, very Cowboys-esque in the sense that it had like big personalities involved with it. The surprise guest, they basically do like a video where they're like, there's only one person that we can think of to really tell us what they believe and what they think about the Cowboys schedule, and it turns out to be Stephen A. Smith, who is a long-term heckler of the Cowboys. He talks a bunch of shit about how the Cowboys are going to suck it up for 2 minutes into this video, and then like the camera crew's like, okay, we're good, man, we appreciate it. He only gets to like week 4 on the schedule, and so Stephen A. Smith's like, what are you talking about? I have like 7 more weeks that I got to get to, and they're like, oh no, we're good, we got everything we needed. And then Stephen A. Smith leaves. He's disappointed. They go to the Cowboys office. Micah Parsons trying to talk to Jerry Jones, and the front office lady's like, actually, Micah, we can't have you do that. Jerry's really busy right now. Micah's also wearing a Penn State hoodie, by the way, because that's where he went to school. Anyway, they go into Jerry Jones's office, and he's like editing something, and they did the thing where they take individual words and make you say completely different things. So they had Stephen A. Smith take all of his insults about the Cowboys, and it turned into stuff like, the Cowboys are going to win the NFC West or the NFC East. The Cowboys are going to have the best season ever. And Stephen A. Smith is like, it cuts to Stephen A. Smith waking up, looking at his computer, and he's like, God damn you, Jerry Jones. And that's what their whole thing is. So that was actually, I thought it was really cool because I thought it would have been really funny if they just roasted themselves about their schedule and let Stephen A. Smith just go for 3 minutes, and they were like, that's the schedule release, and he just talks about every game. I thought that would have been funny. The Jerry Jones aspect of it, I guess that makes it all right. But like, that was one of those things where like they could have just let Stephen A. Smith go. Just the simple fact that they were like, let's get the person who talks the most shit about our team to talk about our schedule for like 3 minutes. I think that would have been like super meta for them to be able to do it. Anyway, the Raiders had a visit Las Vegas type video. There's like an envelope in a mailman's hands. The wind, a gust of wind blows the envelope out of his hands, and it does like a full tour around the Las Vegas Strip, and they go to all these key places in Las Vegas. The envelope flies into Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play, and Max Crosby just so happens to be on the field. He picks it up, opens it up, and then there's like a digital emboss of the schedule behind him, and that's the end of the video. It's not great. It's all right. Could be worse. The cheapest video hands down goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it might be a bottom 5 one. It might be like the worst one, as a matter of fact. So they look like they got Tristan Wirfs as if he was like done with practice or something like that. They had him go and stand in front of a green screen with the Tampa Bay Buccaneer shirt on and do like little things to represent each one of the teams that they're playing. So like they had the Bengals. They were like, all right, do the Bengals. He turns around and he jumps at the camera. He like growls and stuff like that. They're playing the Steelers at one point, and he does Blue Steel from the Zoolander movie type thing, and it looks like they just brainstormed a bunch of things that they could do for each one of the teams. Got a green screen, told Tristan that he has to do it for some reason or whatever, and they probably actually asked a bunch of other players on the team, and they were all like, nah, we're good. And one thing about these schedule release videos I saw that was actually really good, it gave a lot of the players who aren't like the stars of the show that get pushed by the NFL a lot of opportunity to shine on a big stage, right? We'll talk about this. Like Tyrell Burgess is the main character for the LA Rams schedule release video, but Tristan Wirfs does a bunch of stupid shit, and then they're like, that's our schedule. The funniest one is when they're doing the fact that they're playing the Chiefs in like week 5, and Tristan is just standing in front. Like they move the camera up so that the only thing you see is like Tristan's shoulder, his neck, and his head, and then he's just kind of standing around, and then they flash Antoine Winfield throwing out the peace sign at Tyreek Hill, and that's what they do for week 5. That was pretty much it. The Rams filmed as you would imagine, they went over the top. They are an LA team, so they filmed a miniature movie that was like a blend between Mission Impossible and like every bank heist movie ever. They had Terrell Burgess break into the NFL headquarters to get the schedule, break out, and then bring it to it wasn't Sean McVay, it was somebody else. Anyway, they have him do that. He looks at the schedule. He's like, easy win. We beat those guys twice last year. This, and this. And obviously, when they say beat those guys twice last year, they're referencing one team in particular. They had DeMarco Farr, who is a Rams legend. He won a Super Bowl when the Rams were in LA the last time, I guess, or whatever, like Super Bowl 34, I believe it is. And Terrell Burgess like jukes him as he's escaping from the NFL headquarters. And the guy that he hands the envelope to is just like, oh yeah, I was just trying to get a head start on like buying tickets because they sell out really quickly. So yeah. The Bengals made their video using only stock photos. So they basically did a video where like the photos move around and stuff for the Miami. They played Miami in like week 4 or something. And they put Tyreek Hill inside of an F1 racer that says like Miami Dolphins on it. And he's racing against the little AV cart that the players got really attached to during the Bengals season last year, and they're racing in a drag race or whatever, and the cart wins by like a bunch. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's what they did for their video. They just did like little stock photos. Like they used over 1,000 stock photos to make like really wonky stuff. So they took like a photo of New York and then put like all the New York-based Good Morning Football people, and also like they gave a shout out to Kay Adams, who apparently is leaving Good Morning Football. The Washington Commanders, I kind of dig this one a little bit. It was very much the TikTok trend of for my male audience. They took like 4 of their players to a smash room, and I don't know if this is like a room in the building that they already had, and they just put like a bunch of protective sheets up to prevent like debris from flying everywhere else, and gave them like face shields. But basically, they had like a glass display, and it said the Commanders 2022 schedule. They had somebody take a sledgehammer, break it or whatever, and then they had different representations for like each team. Like they had like a gnome for the Jaguars, and somebody smashed it with a hammer, and then they had a bunch of other stuff as well. And they threw stuff against the wall, and each one of them represented every team that they were going to play. They also did it in slow-mo, which is like the cocaine of every boy's dream when it comes to breaking things, right? The Colts probably had the most wholesome of the videos. Matt Ryan, a.k.a. Matty Ice, makes this really lame-ass joke about how he is called Matty Ice because he's a great ice sculptor, and he sculpts like a giant schedule placard. He sculpts like an eagle, and he sculpts the Colts logo, and then their coach comes up, and he's just like, yeah, Frank Reich comes up, and he's like, yeah, now we need one for every single week and the bye week. And he's like, oh, that's going to take a while. And he's got like the ice sculptor gear on, like the overalls with the chisel tools and shit like that. And then they just show the schedule as if it's like digital ice. So it's, it's wholesome, I guess. it was a way to, like, you know, get Matt Ryan involved in stuff. He just got there, all that kind of deal. So a real contender for number one against this is actually probably number two on my list. It is the Panthers schedule release video. They did a straight up 90s theme, and they hid the schedule in like things throughout this one kid's house. So there's a kid who's like coming home. He's like riding on his bike. He dumps the bike off, runs into his room, and then "This Is How We Do It" starts playing. Da 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 da. And there's all this 90s gear. So like he looks over to his left hand side, and his computer's in the same room as the main TV in the living room and all that kind of jazz like that. There's a and this is a black family, by the way, so shout out the Panthers for, you know, using a little diversity there. He goes over to his computer, and it's got the little infinite 3D pipes thing going on, like the old screensaver from the 90s. If you're not from the 90s, you don't know what that is, you should look it up. And they do a bunch of different references. He gets like bagel bites and Dunkaroos from his mom, and he rocks like a chain wallet on his jeans. He gets a Digipet, he gets a Gigapet, and it shows one of the scheduled games. He has posters in his room, and they have the game schedule on it. He has a Sanyo TV where they used to have like the logo bounce around from corner to corner, and it would never touch the exact corner type deal. And it was one of the scheduled games. He had a NES, and he put the cartridge, he blew on the cartridge as if, and they go to POV mode, right, where it's like from your perspective, and he blows on the cartridge, puts it in, it's one of the games, and all that kind of jazz like that. He goes outside, gets ice cream, and it's Thomas Davis Sr., who's one of the best linebackers in the history of the Panthers, one of their most influential players as well, and he hands him a push pop, you know, like that kind of thing. It was really, really good, because there was a lot of subtle stuff that the kid didn't use to represent like any of the game schedule that was also still really just straight up 90s. They did a really good job, and obviously that was made by a bunch of people who grew up in the 90s. So that's my number two for sure. The Falcons didn't make a video. Instead, they did every team as if they were a chicken wing. And you have to look at it. It's like a thread on their Twitter account. And for the Cardinals one, they did like a burnt wing because it's hot in Arizona. And also they say they're going to like cook them or whatever kind of deal. And yeah, like they have like a lemon pepper one for somebody. Anyway, it's definitely a reference to the Magic City wings and like, you know, just wings in general in Atlanta. So definitely check that out. It's not a video, it's just a thread of photos, and they're pretty funny. The Chiefs had probably one of the worst videos, if not the worst one. Apparently paying Patrick Mahomes $500 million is really taking up a lot of money for the team budget. I don't get why Patrick Mahomes isn't in every single thing that the Chiefs put on the internet. But they basically faxed the schedule to the Chiefs, and then they had Andy Reid read it on camera in his office. So like they could have done this in like 30 minutes. Like they pretended to fax something over. And he was like, "This is the 2022 schedule. I got to get this to Andy Reid immediately." He runs off. And they hand it, and he just reads the schedule. He's like, "Oh man, it's gonna be really cool to play them on Christmas Eve." Anyway, that's what the Chiefs video was. The Ravens had a dude who's like famous on TikTok pretend that he got into a Zoom meeting that he wasn't supposed to be in. He had like a fake green screen background as if he was in like one of the offices. John Harbaugh sees him as Roger Goodell's reading off the primetime games for the Ravens. He's still reading them off, like you can very clearly hear it. John Harbaugh is like, "The schedule is compromised. Can you guys take care of it?" And they get their offensive lineman to like chase the green screen guy because he's like outside at a cookout, and he gets the link meeting and puts the green screen on his waist, and it shows up behind him, and it makes him look like whatever. He's running away from their offensive lineman, and they shove him over, and he like has all of his stuff blow up in his face and all that kind of stuff. That's the only video they put out. The Browns probably had one of the worst. They had a bottom three on this one. So a long time ago, they did this thing where they had the section pull down these giant banners, and it was supposed to say "Dog Pound," except the WG ended up in the far left hand group of people's hands, and then the DA ended up in the group next to them, and then the pound ended up mixed up as well. So they just did that with every team that they're playing for this upcoming season. They just like misspelled everybody's name. It was stupid. And the music was like really corny. The Jaguars did a hype video that was not hype at all, and it was Yeah, they were just like, it was literally the theme of it was "You in?" ? What a question to ask your fans. And they just took like videos. They took like highlights from each team that they were playing, and they're like, to face off against, flagship teams. And they showed the Giants with Saquon Barkley and other stuff. Like, they just did that for the entirety of the thing. It was very strange. The Eagles, in the strange category as well, they played a balloon game where you put air into a balloon and you're trying to push cups that have team logos in the bottom of the cup over the top of the logo of the like they're all the teams that are on the schedule, and the schedule is like in mixed up order, and you have to push the cups using the air from the balloon releasing over the top of where their logo is on the other side of the table, and then whoever did it fastest wins. And like Miles Sanders and I think Jason Everett did it in like 2 minutes and some seconds or whatever. It was really dumb. I didn't enjoy it. And then I think the offensive lineman, or Jason Kelsey, got mad because they lost by like a minute. He's like, oh, so we got fucking crushed. And he's like, well, fuck this. And he like walks off camera. It's really funny. The game host was like really funny too. He had like a gray blazer on and a tie with like a thick ass mustache and like a massive wig on to pretend like he was an old school game show host kind of deal. And they just, it was not funny. It wasn't clever or anything. It was unique. The Packers did a reference to Golden Tee, the old arcade game, and they had like multiple players on the team. So they had like Aaron Jones do like a digital version of Aaron Jones. Like they just put the players in the game Golden Tee and had them hit hole-in-ones, and at the end of the hole-in-one, each one of the holes represented a team that they were playing. That was it. So there was a lot of teams who did a lot of mid stuff, and there's a lot of teams who just went above and beyond. The Panthers, so I'll go one Chargers just because I loved it so much, and it's the only one that I watched multiple times. The Titans because of the meaning behind it, and of course the Panthers with their 90s themed schedule release video. So shout out to all those teams if you wanted to check that out, man. So number one was the anime themed LA Chargers one. Loved every single second of it. And then number two was the Tennessee Titans and their initiative to support the black businesses on Jefferson Street in Nashville, Tennessee. And number three was the completely 90s themed time traveling schedule release video of the Carolina Panthers. Hands down, loved it. If the Titans didn't have such a meaningful video, the Panthers would be number two, hands down. Number one, the Chargers obviously put the most work into it, and it showed very much so. So yeah, we got that. We got other stuff that's going on, and then we're gonna finish up this show because it's way too late. It's 5:30 in the morning, and I really don't want to watch the sunrise. It messes with my head. NBA playoffs is going down. This is not a drill. We thought for a second there, I watched it. We thought for a second we were going to have to deal with potentially 3 Game 7s going into the Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals. By the way, shout out to Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. The Eastern Conference MVP and the Western Conference MVP are going to be named after each one of them respectively. Obviously, Magic Johnson, because he played for the Lakers for such a long period of time, is going to be the Western Conference MVP. And then Larry Bird, because he played for the Celtics all those years, is going to be the Eastern Conference MVP, Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Both of those trophies are going to be named after them. That's dope. 2 members of the team that have been, 2 members of the NBA history that have been pivotal and are still alive to be able to receive those roses that go along with it. Other thing too, it does not hurt that winning time is out right now, because I definitely feel like that has some kind of influence to go along with this. Anyway, we go on to everything else that went on. Warriors versus Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are officially eliminated from the playoffs. It's really tough because obviously they would want a situation where Ja will be able to continue to play in the playoffs. You would imagine that would make a massive difference for what the Grizzlies were capable of doing. And I say that knowing that in Game 5, the Grizzlies won that game by 39 points. So to imagine what Ja could do and be a part of in that final Game 6 that resulted in the 4-2 series victory for the Golden State Warriors. Who knows? You know what I mean? The one thing that for sure was impressive. It felt like for just a brief second in the final waning minutes in the middle of the fourth quarter, it felt like the Splash Brothers were back again, like they used to be. I know they can't dial it up, just like we're seeing the fall of James Harden right now. I know they can't dial it up and go out there and just absolutely light it up without any discretion whatsoever. But the Warriors reestablished the brand. They hit 23s. They got 60 points off three-pointers. They also attempted 53 of those, and they also had 17 turnovers compared to the 6 turnovers from the Memphis Grizzlies. But luckily for them, Kevon Looney decided he was going to have a night where he had all-time night in terms of rebounds. He had 22 rebounds in total. 11 of them were offensive rebounds. 11 were defensive rebounds. Very, very impressive. It also didn't help on the Memphis side. They were just out there chucking up bricks. They literally shot 35% overall, not from three. They shot 35% as a team in this game. They hit 15 threes off 36 shots, but it really felt like the Warriors made them pay almost every single time that they missed in terms of like getting layups and being able to attack the basket. Especially they just generated more offensive opportunities. While the 23s off the volume shooting was really impressive, the most impressive part was Game 6 Clay reappearing again, and then Kevon Looney's 22 rebounds, which sealed the deal for the Warriors, because they got three extra shots, and 2 of those shots went down for threes off of his offensive rebounds. Absolutely insane. And the Warriors finish up big, and they get to whoop that trick. Draymond Green, who said we're going to whoop that trick together if we're going to whoop that trick, when he did the whoop that trick after the Grizzlies annihilated the Warriors, which, by the way, felt like on the internet, based off what Grizzly fans were saying, felt like he kind of ruined their celebration, almost like he was mocking them. And it does not help that they got tuned up in the elimination game the following 2 days ago, since Draymond Green decided to whoop that trick at the end of the Memphis game. Also, you find out who your friends are that are cool and which ones are not, because there's a lot of people in a lot of people's lives that don't know what whoop that trick mean, because they did not watch Hustle and Flow, one of the greatest hip hop movies, actually one of the best movies I've ever seen personally. I'm not much of a movie critic, but Hustle and Flow was very good. It was Terrence Howard and Taraji P. Henson, and one of the best performances I've seen out of either one of those actors, and they're both amazing actors. So the 76ers eliminated the Miami Heat, and they are back in the conference finals for the first time since they got back there during the bubble season, which of course they ended up going and beating the Bucks to advance on to they beat, who did they beat? Did they beat the Raptors? They beat the Bucks in the first round of the playoffs, or the second round of the playoffs in the bubble, and then got to the NBA Finals, played against LeBron James and the Lakers, and subsequently lost that series or whatever, because Bam got hurt and couldn't compete. And I'm sure he's looking forward to having a chance to go back to the NBA Finals and actually play. The 76ers are eliminated, and at this point, the process is without question over. Like, most of those players are gone. Like Ben Simmons is gone, and the second that he left, technically you could say the process is over, because Ben Simmons was a part of the process. Joel Embiid is really all that's left of that team when it's all said and done. And we can sit here and we can applaud the process for what it was. It was pivotal. It was game changing for NBA basketball as a whole, without question. But it was interrupted. They eventually got their general manager fired and stuff like that. A lot of other stuff came out afterwards. And then, of course, Ben Simmons didn't pan out to be the guy that they thought he was going to be in terms of being a basketball player. So we can tip our hat to the era that was the process and usher in what is going to be new, because Daryl Morey, we're still waiting on Daryl Morey to find that next big step, right? Because he found James Harden. James Harden turned out to be a superstar. Totally understandable. That's great to be able to do it once. But kind of a testament to Sam Presti, like, as a general manager, he's found 3 different MVPs, drafted Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, James Harden, was able to find Serge Ibaka, Reggie Jackson, who was a massive lead and vocal a linchpin for the LA Clippers. Like that, those Thunder teams that Sam Presti put together were absolutely ridiculous. And, we're looking at Daryl Morey, and Daryl Morey was able to assess that James Harden was great, and a couple of other players as well, but none to the caliber of James Harden. He's like the crown jewel of scouting a diamond in the rough, right? and gave him an opportunity, made him into the superstar that he is, and continued to make sure that he played for the team that he was on with the 76ers. It has been confirmed that Daryl Morey and by Daryl Morey that James Harden and Doc Rivers are coming back next season, which I'm sure Philadelphia fans are super pumped about. But this season was hands down, without question, a super disappointment on multiple fronts. They thought that Joel Embiid was going to end up being the MVP, and that just didn't happen for him. Nikola Jokic is, again, back-to-back, understandably so, especially if you just look at the numbers. A lot of people disagreed. A lot of people need to watch how the Denver Nuggets played this season. Like, just go watch them play basketball, and you'll understand very easily why why Nikola Jokic was MVP. Moving on to Mavericks Suns. So in this series, between the flopping and Jalen Brunson somehow playing like at an NBA star level on a consistent basis, on a consistent basis in like half of these games, Jalen Brunson has shown up and been very, very impressive, especially in the times where Luka has been tired because he's had to play max out defense because the Suns are hunting him in terms of like setting up screens and trying to force matchups with other people, and they're trying to wear him down so that he can't be as dominant as he is on offense, which he has been multiple times throughout the course of this game or throughout the course of this series. The same thing with Jalen Brunson. He's had to pick up the slack, and we saw it in Game 5. He went out there and he did his thing, man. Like, the Suns eventually pulled away, but it was mostly stemming from the fact that it was like Jalen Brunson and Luka out there by themselves, right? Now we're talking about Game 6 when they put it all together and they were able to go out there and blow out the Suns because CP3 has been suspect as of late is the way that I'll phrase it. That's been tough. There's a Game 7 coming up, and it's going to be a ton of fun to watch because it could go either way based off what we've seen from these two teams. They've been doing a good job of countering each other multiple times over. There's a reason that Monty Williams is coach of the year in the NBA, and Jason Kidd is also pretty impressive at his job. That's why he keeps getting coaching jobs, because he actually knows what he's doing and he shows it on a number of occasions. Bucks versus Celtics. The series has felt like this has been a battle between Giannis and Jason Tatum on multiple occasions. The highlight has hands down been the relentless running back nature of Giannis as he goes up and down the court versus the Celtics defense, and they, strangely enough, like did come up with a counter for Giannis. It is Al Horford and Robert Williams. By the way, Al Horford, one of my favorite basketball players ever. I feel like if more centers played like Al Horford, the quality of center in the NBA would be ridiculous. I've always been a fan of Al Horford. I've said it on this show multiple times over, but to see him like finding this gap where he can fill in and be like, oh, I'm just going to defend the reigning MVP, or I'm going to defend the 2-time MVP and the 1-time Defensive Player of the Year and figure that out. You know what I mean? Like, figuring out how to do that at his age in the NBA, right, is absolutely absurd. And being a part of a system that is has done on multiple occasions a good job of wrapping up Giannis in terms of his impact on the game, which is why we've got a Game 7 on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. The Bucks, on the other hand, have been a nightmare defensively for the Celtics. I went and looked at the numbers on this one. They've played their 7 games or whatever. They've played their 6 games. The Celtics have lost 3. Those are the only 3 losses they have in the playoffs, obviously, because they clean swept the Brooklyn Nets. But those 3 games that they lost, one of them they had like 50% from field in terms of field goal percentage, but 2 of them they had 34 and 36. Those would be the bottom 3 games. It would be those 2 games plus 1 more game. That would be the bottom 3 games from the entirety of the Celtics season. So, like, they're literally having their worst shooting performances versus the Bucks, like, overall as a team. And that's a product of not only the Bucks' size, but also just their defensive adjustments overall, and the fact that they have such versatility in the dudes that are playing defense for them. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, Bobby Portis has got to be terrifying to the Celtics at this point. Like, it has to be at that point where they're just, like, highly concerned anytime he comes onto the court, because not only is he tenacious and vicious about how he defends the paint, but he can also run out there to the perimeter and make something happen a little bit. Not saying that he's going to do it consistently, but he'll do it enough to have the Celtics shooting at, like, fucking 35% or whatever, from 35% as a team from the field. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, NBA playoffs are coming to, the conference finals will be
upon us before you know it. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be lit. It's going to be a ton of fun. Half the teams are locked in and have arrived. The Heat are in there. The Warriors are in there in the Western Conference, and there is still a hope for a hope for an NBA Finals rematch. Strangely enough, don't see that too often, where you can see a potential Bucks Suns rematch because they're both still in it, because they've both somehow gotten better than they were last year. Can't wait to see what happens. Warriors Suns gonna be sick. That's my call, by the way. Warriors Suns gonna be sick. It would be also dope to see Luka get to the conference finals as he gets his first year where he's escaped the first round of the playoffs. And I say escape because it's a fight for that dude and the Dallas Mavericks to make something happen. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take my leave. It's 5:40 in the morning. It's time for me to go to sleep. It's time for you to go to sleep. Appreciate you. I'm going to upload that interview with DeMontre Tuggle when I wake up, I guess in a couple of hours, and see what we can do with that. Hopefully you enjoy it like I enjoy talking to DeMontre. He's a Houston native and is in the NFL, man. He's trying to fight to make the 53-man roster for the Chicago Bears, and I can't wait to see what he does with his football career. He's come a long, long way, and he's been fighting tooth and nail to get to where he is now, and I would not expect anything less than 100% from him. Anyway, I'm out of here. Wash your hands, wash your ass. If you have the ability to wash your entire body, please do that as often as possible. I don't mean every other day. I mean do it every day. Please do that for us. Do it for society. Do it for the world. Do it for the world. One less funky person. Appreciate that. Go home, Roger.